Behind me is the 2022 Audi RS3, and in this video I'm going to talk to you about why this car has changed the hot hatch game forever. We probably want to start by looking at where it all began. The RS3 has been around since 2010, and over the years it's just got quicker and quicker. It started its life with 340 brake horsepower and has gone up to 400 brake horsepower from 2021. The 2022 variant of the RS3 is a little bit different, however. It has the ability to drift. Now, on the surface, that may sound a little bit gimmicky, and some may even question why Audi have had to do this. Is it because they wanted to, or was it because they were forced to by the likes of the A45S? But gimmick or not, the RS3 is set up with a mechanical front diff, and on the rear wheels, we've got two electronic clutches which allow for the opposite side wheel to keep pushing, which will create oversteer as well when powering out of corners. Now, I went to the launch of the RS3 in Austria, and I took this around some pretty epic mountain roads, and I could really feel the back trying to kick out when powering out of corners. Audis have been traditionally known for understeer, and whilst previous models of the RS3 had wider front tyres than the rear to try and counter Audi steer, they never really got it quite right, until now that is. Now, the RS3, as we all know, comes with the glorious 2.5 litre 5-cylinder engine that's lived under the bonnet for the same time as the original RS3's birth. Now, it's a cracking engine, it delivers great sound and plenty of power, and over the years the RS3's 2.5 has had different turbos attached to it to increase performance and torque. And whilst this variant is it's not a huge power increase over the last model, it still provides incredible performance and power for what is ultimately one of the best hot hatches out on the market. Of course, the RS3 being four-wheel drive means it makes it a great all year round car and can pretty much be used for all style of driving. Now, whilst the RS3 has evolved over the years, so has its price. And this is where you need to be sitting down for this, because this car comes in at an eye-watering £67,900 for what is ultimately a hot hatch. That said, this car does have some pretty hefty options. The most expensive being the RS pack, which costs $5,500, and that consists of the carbon ceramic brakes as well as the adaptive suspension. However, even if you opted for the most base spec RS3, it's still going to cost you 51 grand. If we look at the RS3 styling perspective in this 2022 model, we can see the front end has got a whole lot more aggressive. It's got wider front wings. The rear of the car is much more beefed up, and overall it just looks a lot more pissed off than its predecessors. It looks super aggressive. But taking all that we've talked about into account, the RS3 has fundamentally changed the hot hatch game forever, whether you like it or not. It's created its own class within the market, and I don't think it can even be called a hot hatch anymore. Hot hatches used to cost around £25,000, and whilst the world has changed and inflation has provided some severe tailwinds to price hikes, I can't believe I'm looking at something that costs almost as much as a new shape M3 or a Giulia Quadrifoglio. But whilst this is an eye-watering amount of money for a car, it's also a hell of a lot of car. Let me demonstrate. Zero to 62 miles per hour dispatched in just 3.8 seconds. This car is 400 brake horsepower. It'll do 180 miles per hour. Now, what hot hatch do you know that does 180 miles per hour? It's just ridiculous. I mean, when it comes to hot hatches, I look at the majority of hot hatches sitting, in football terms, in the Premier League. The RS3, however, lives in the Champions League. I mean, it's faster than most performance cars out there, as in, like, it punches so far above its weight, it's absolutely ridiculous. This car is nuts. I mean, the RS3 has always been good, but this one is next level. It really is next level. And of course, with this model, you get, as I mentioned earlier on, you get the RS mode, you get the RS Torque rear mode, which sends all that power to the back using those electronic clutches, which means from a dynamics perspective in terms of handling, it makes it so much more involving, which is a good thing. thing I mentioned earlier on is this car comes with the RS Dynamic Pack, which consists of the adaptive suspension and the carbon ceramic brakes. Now for me, the carbon ceramic brakes, if you're only going to use this car on the road, might be a little bit overkill. However, if you are going to stick this on a track, they are definitely warranted, because you will be hammering down on those brakes. And whilst the steel brakes are good, when I took this car out in Austria, I was hammering it and the brakes took a little bit of a beating. Let's put it that way. That sound of the 5-cylinder never gets old. But the sound, the performance is one thing. For that kind of price point, when you look at the interior of the car, you have to ask yourself the question, does the interior deliver on what is ultimately Audi's flagship hot hatch? Well, in some cases I would say yes, and in others I'd say no. Interior wise, for example, these seats, beautiful in full Alcantara. I've got a Bang & Olufsen sound system, which again is incredibly impressive. However, the question for me is, I'm looking at it here as a driver, and I still have to ask myself, how different is this from the likes of the A3 or the A1? You know, there isn't an awful lot of difference. And you know, when you're looking at cars such as A45S, for example, which you look at the interior and they feel very futuristic, very modern, very spaceship-like. Oh, back end going there. They feel very spaceship, very modern-like. The RS3, whilst it has some nice cues, such as the new center display with the tram lines coming towards you, it still feels an awful lot familiar. The other thing as well to point out will be these seats themselves. Whilst for the majority of driving, these are absolutely perfect, they're extremely comfortable. I really like the RS seats. But if you're really going to get the most out of this car, you're going to stick it on a track. And that's where, for me, the bolstering is good, but when you're sliding this car around, you're not necessarily going to get the best from it, because they could hug you a little bit more. That said, the car still does feel very premium. All the plastics in here feel nice. You do know you're sitting in Audi's flagship model to an extent. Things such as boot space in here are very good. You know, it's very practical. It gives you all the gizmos such as Apple CarPlay, your lovely big screen, all the stuff that you'd expect to use this car for everything. The RS3 delivers on it. 100%. Rear space. The rear space is good. Rear seats are good. Look, as a whole, it's a brilliant thing. However, with all that said and done, the Audi RS3 is still a phenomenal car. And if you do go out and buy one, you will absolutely love it. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Please do subscribe. It really does help the channel. And I'll see you all very soon on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.